and welcome back to Bunters Yard. So today we've got another Smokey Joe on the bench, again without a chimney, as you probably noticed. This particular one's a non-runner, so we're just going to make this little rusty thing and sit it on a siding somewhere, and it can slowly decay for the rest of its time. So there's a few issues with this that we need to sort out. I'm going to get rid of those couplings, and I'm going to fit a new handrail on. I've already done one side and pre-drilled this ready. I'll show you in a bit how we're going to do that. And it's slightly different to the previous one if you've seen that video. And then we're going to rust it. Now there's two ways of doing the rust. And the one is we can just paint straight over the existing paintwork and livery. But you know, rust will normally sit on the metalwork and underneath the paint. So in the correct order of things, you would have the body and then the rust and then the paint over the top. So we're going to do it in that. I don't need the Smokey Joe logo on there anymore, so we're going to paint straight over that, and then we're going to use a hairspray technique. So the first thing we need to do is replace that chimney. Now these are resin printed, and I'll put a link down below to these and these brackets, which are for the handrails. You can buy these in a little set on eBay, and they go in those holes which I've already pre-drilled. So there are marks on these old Smokey Joes, and you can just sort of pre-drill in the marks. And there you saw the couplings we're going to use there from Curious Scale, and I'll put the link down below to those as well. So to drill the front of this, we need to take the body off for one particular reason, is that there's a kind of metal lump underneath where the chimney goes, so you can't actually drill straight through the body because you hit the metal, and the drills don't like it. So we're just going to pop that off. A couple of clips underneath. There's no screws on these, as you know, and that's the lump there. And then we're going to drill through that. Now this is a fairly clean break. I'm not going to spend much time cleaning this up, and we're not going to do any filling. We'll just put some more rust around it to hide the mark. But let's make it flat, so we get a bit of a nice join, and then we'll just drill this. I think it's a 2mm drill bit, and this is the right size then for the little locating pin on there. Pop that in there, and we'll glue it from the underside, and that's pretty much done. We're just going to wait for that to set. It takes about 10-15 seconds with this super glue, and then we can move on. Now for the handrail, we're using this wire. I think this is 16 gauge, not totally sure, but it's about 0.6 of a mil, I think, and it's just the internal part of that sort of single strand. And then to straighten it, just roll it underneath a piece of card on your worktop, and it'll become fairly straight. And then these are the little brackets, and we're just going to super glue them into place. I found it's easy to put these on, and then we'll put the new handrail through in a little bit, and just thread it through the holes there. And for a bit of extra security on the last one, maybe just put a touch of super glue in, and that will hold it in place. So the couplings we need to get rid of. These are soft plastic on these, so you can cut them with a blade. I'm just lazy, so I've got my Dremel out. I like to use my Dremel, my little friend. And that's it, ready to go. So that's reassembled. So that the handrails are not particularly straight, but that's fine. It kind of suits this rusty, dishevelled look, so I'm happy with that. And the cab and the livery on the side, I don't want to rust, as you'll see in a little bit what I've got in mind. So just going to mask that off, and then everything forward of that is going to get a coat of black primer. This just unifies everything. So we've got a few different materials on there, you know, the chain and the plastic body, and we've got the metal of the handrails, and the resin chimney as well. So make sure that gets a good coat of primer. And we're just going to cover everything, just to sort of unify everything together. Now the chains off camera, just after this shot, I just glued them into place so they don't sort of wave around anymore, and we'll work around that in a little bit. It just seemed easier that way, so that's what we're going to do for this. Now, unlike sort of previous videos, we don't need to worry about getting paint on the wheels. Actually, we're going to actively put more paint on there, so we're going to prime them first as well. So our next layer is going to be our rust tones, and we've got just 3 sort of random brown tones. They're not necessarily rust colours according to the labels. So we're going to start with dark brown is our first colour, and we're just going to cover everything with this brown general sort of rusty colour. And we need to add some powders a bit later on, so once we've done the chipping we'll add powders to sort of blend everything in together. But for now we're just looking for just some patches of different sort of rust tones that are going to poke through the paint chips when we get that going. So this second colour is just sort of patches here and there. We're covering a less with this, and we'll highlight it with the orange in a moment. And then with the orange brown, which is our next rusty colour, we are just adding in sort of around the edges and places where panels have been joined together, and water would ingress, and you'd get the rusting process would start more readily than on other places. So our next stage is we're going to seal everything in, and we're going to use a vallejo. This is a satin polyurethane varnish. You can use one straight out the can if you choose, whatever you need to, whatever's more convenient. Just make sure this layer dries as best as you can allow it to, so give it a good few hours if you can. And this layer just stops the chipping effect going through into your rust layer. And then we're going to cover it with hairspray. So we're going to give one general coat, and then a second coat once they're dry. It would just do. So we'll let that fully dry. That takes, well, here it's quite warm today, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes or so. But just let it fully dry, and then we can put on our top coat. We're using Vallejo Air Black, which just matches the rest of the plastic on the back of the cab. So it will sort of blend in. Not that we're going to see much of the cab when we finish anyway, but anyway, it's the correct colour. And just need to put as much as this on, just give it, we're having one coat on this. Now if you put more coats on, it will chip differently because the paint will be thicker. Or if you choose different colours, if you want to fill in the buffer beams and so on, they're going to chip differently to the rest of the paint we put on because of thickness basically. So just bear that in mind. So once that's dry, don't need to wait to it fully dry, maybe just give it 10 minutes or so. And then we're just going to use plain old beautiful tap water, and we're just going to brush it on. You can see it just starting to release at the top there, and I'm using fairly sort of gentle strokes here. We're not aiming to take all of the paint off. We want to leave some bits sort of in some of the recesses and just some patches here and there. The idea is to get the majority off of the roof, because that's where most of the rust would occur, on those horizontal surfaces where the rain would have fallen, and it's going to get most of the weather up there, I guess. So that's what we're going to do, and just take your time with this one. If you get any bits that are stubborn, or if you want to get more off, just use a firmer brush. And yeah, whatever suits the model you're working on. Everyone on this one, as I say, the top of the loco to lose most of its paint, and down the side not as much. So when we gave it the second coat of hairspray, it meant that the paint was going to chip off easier on the top, which it has, and down the sides where it only got one single coat, it's a little bit tougher to get the paint off. So slightly different effect between the sort of tops and the sides, which is what we was after. And we just need to go around the whole model again, doing this, taking off as much paint as you need. You've got to be careful at this point not to handle the bit with your fingers, the bit that's wet with the water, because otherwise you'll start to peel more paint off with your fingers. I've done that before myself, so just beware. These obviously vallejo air is an acrylic colour, so it's water based, so you can't do the same effect with enamels. It only works with acrylic paints. Just make sure that if you're going to do this, then acrylics such as vallejo, which we use here. And then just dab it off with the tissue, just very, very gently. Just get rid of the most of the water, and it'll to let it to dry. Now it looks a bit horrendous at this point, I happily admit, but once it's dried and we've got everything in place, hopefully it'll be okay. So we're going to fit a tarpaulin into this one. Now this tarpaulin is made from just plain paper that's come out of the printer. We're just going to cut a couple of pieces to shape. We're going to have one tarpaulin that will go across the back to cover the cab. That's why we haven't bothered painting the cab and the roof. And then we're going to have a piece at the front, like a rolled up tarp that's just sort of sitting there, not doing much of anything. I'm just sort of test fitting this just to get the size right. Then we're using a product called Paper Shaper from a company called VMS, and it's not particularly cheap. It's probably about £7 for that little bottle, so quite expensive. But you just I've seen other YouTubers and they just sort of soak it in a bath of the stuff, but I found it just spray a little bit on like that, and then we'll get a brush and we'll manipulate it just to make sure it gets soaked. And the idea is that it makes the paper nice and sort of flexible, and it then will set in any shape that you put it in. But just bear in mind, as you'll see in a moment, the paper does go, obviously it's wet paper, it's going to go quite delicate, so you do need to be careful. So you need to let that soak fully. I need to put a bit more on there on this one, and you'll know when it's properly done, because it kind of, you can just see that it's becoming a bit more translucent at the ends there. Now these can stick to the bottom of the, I'm just using the top of a like a business card size box, just the lid of that. I'm just going to leave that over the side just to let that soak in a little bit more. And that little piece is for our rolled up tarpaulin that's going to be on the front of the loco. Again, we just let that soak for a second. It doesn't take that long to do this. Now I've tried different tarpaulins before. I've tried using tape and foil and tissue and all sorts of things, and also rolled out putty, which works quite well, but it's not really to scale. But this seems to be about the best solution that I've found so far, and it's a lot quicker than using the putty, because that takes all night to dry. So yeah, so just pop it into place. Now this is quite delicate, as you'll see. I'll tear it, but it doesn't matter. It's not the end of the world. We can hide that. We can just move it around. I know you can't see some of what I'm doing because my fingers are in the way of the camera. I'll try getting a good view of this one, but I thought I'd leave all the footage pretty much in as it is. There's actually a lot of my hands in this shot. I didn't realise. My apologies. But anyway, so we're just gonna sort of push it gently into place. I just use my fingers. You can use, if you've got other softer tools like maybe a brush, that would work. So we just push the things into place and then just make some creases and folds and hangs until you think it looks, another tear, until you think it looks kind of natural. It takes a little while to dry, but once you've got it hanging right, it probably will stay there. Now it does say in the blurb on the website that you can remove the tarpaulin once it's dry, but I found that you probably can't. So if you need to do that, I would possibly maybe put some cling film over your model before you do this. But on a shape like this, I think you'd struggle to get that tarpaulin off again. So this is a one-way process. We're going to put it on, it's going to stay there, and we're going to have to paint it in situ, which presents its own issues, but it's not that bad. So something like that. Now it looks a bit weird because it's white and it looks like it's been covered in a bed sheet with a hole in it. But hopefully once it's dried and we've coloured it in a bit more, it will look much better. You can see it's starting to take shape now. Now once it's dried fully, you could maybe even sort of with a small drill bit in a pin vise, maybe drill around the edges. You could add strings on, I guess, if you wanted to. We can do something slightly different with ours. So the tarp at the front, I'm just going to roll up. I've just doubled it over, or tripled it over, and then rolled it so it looks like this. You can see sort of the inside of it. Just fold in the corner back, make it look a bit more casual. And then I'm going to fold the edge as well. Just put a bit more fluid on there, just so I can manipulate it a bit more now it's folded. You can see that fold I put in, and it's going to sit on the end, something like that. And that's it. Just hang it over the edge, and this one I'm going to super glue in place. So once that's done, we need to paint this. This is olive green, I think, from Vallejo. It's one of the sort of British Army type colours. But you can use whatever colour you want for your tarps. It doesn't have to be this colour, just like this one. It's kind of muted. And we've got it on a low pressure, and we're going to carefully airbrush in as much as we can without going over the edge. So we're going to leave a space around the edge, and then we'll finish it with a fine brush at the end. And there's lots of folds and recesses. You need to make sure as best you can you get into those. If you have any sort of white showing, it's going to give the game away. So with the same colour and a very fine brush, we just need to go around the edges. Try not to get too much onto the model if you can. This is going to be weathered in with powders, so some of this won't be so obvious once it's finished. But it's not too difficult with a steady hand. You just colour all the edges in. And then we've mixed a lighter, like a tan, I think it's called sand, but any light colour in with the green, and we just spray these sort of in the middle of the sort of panels or the hangs where the tarp is, and it just adds just a light tone there, just to break up that sort of field of green. So it just adds a bit of fading and weathering into the tarpaulin. And then we've added even more of the lighter colour, so this is still just barely green, and with a very fine brush, just going to go along some of the edges just to sort of pick those bits out so we can see the folds. Close up it probably doesn't look as it should, but from a distance it just makes the sort of folds and the hangs very obvious, I think. So you just need to take a bit of time doing that on this one, and also on the rolled up one on the front. And that's it for the tarpaulin for now. Now I did consider putting strings on the tarp, but I thought I could use something like a rope, just if it's going to be lashed on really, quickly by whoever's done this. And this is a piece of one of the strands out of an Ethernet cable or something. So really quite a fine wire, but it's got a bit of bend in it, and it's sort of rope coloured. So I thought I'd use this one without. I won't have to paint it then. It'll just get some powders on it in a bit. But obviously you can use, string, or if you've got any rope that would fit to scale, that would look good. And I'm just going to super glue this into place like that. And then down to weathering, and this kind of hopefully is going to tie it all together. And I've got different colours in there, the usual suspects, a couple of shades of rust and Humboldt dark earth, and also the green oxide. So this has been sitting around for ages, this particular loco in the rain. So we're going to mix a bit of the green oxide with the weathering powder, and this just gives like a little green algae type hue to the top. That's maybe a bit green. We'll need to mute that down with some dark earth. So we're using mainly dark earth here. This just kind of mutes everything down a little bit, especially on the tarpaulin. This bit we didn't obviously rust and chip, it's the original paintwork, so we're just using our dark earth just to make that look a bit similar to the rest of the loco. And we'll continue that dark earth along that rail. Not sure where that bit of paint's come from. I think it's come off there. I'll colour that in later on. And one of the rust powders is that yellow, which is actually really, really nice. I don't use it enough, but once you dot it in, you need to use too much. It does get a bit silly otherwise. But just a little bit of that, and blend it with some other colours. It actually is quite nice. So around the top is where most of our rust action is happened, and we're just going to try and soften the edges of the paint where we've chipped. A lot of it's kind of not totally obscured, but it all kind of blends into one. It's lots of different layers that we need to get to that effect. Again, I'm using that yellow, and we've got the fresh rust and old rust as well. And then around this chimney, now we didn't do a repair on that, we didn't sort of fill it, so we're just going to use lots and lots of rust. So we're just going to continue the rest of the model. Don't forget, when you get to the end of yours, you'd need to use a varnish just to seal everything in. Just mutes it all back a little bit, but it makes it easier to handle your model. If you're just going to sit in the back of the layout in a yard, then you won't need to do that if you don't want to. So that's about it. We'll show you some of the finished shots in a moment. I hope you've enjoyed this one, and if you're not subscribed, please do subscribe so you get to see these as they come out. I'll try and do 2 a week at the moment. I'm not saying we're going to do that forever, but this one's been a little bit fun, something I want to do for a little while for you, and we'll leave you with that. And we'll see you very soon. Enjoy the rest of your day.